What if I told you that some of the most beautiful pickups ever created weren't born for showrooms or exhibitions, but to work hard every single day? In the 1960s, an American pickup wasn't just a tool, it was a statement of character, of strength, of style. Before design was dictated by wind tunnels and efficiency regulations, there was a time when pickups were drawn with simple, muscular, and honest lines, vehicles that could haul heavy loads during the week, and still look incredible parked in front of the house on the weekend. In this video, we're taking a journey through the most beautiful American pickups of the 1960s, a time when a pickup could be just as visually striking as any passenger car. 1967 to 1969 Chevrolet C10. If there's one pickup that defines how an American truck should have looked in the late 1960s, this is it. The C10 from this generation marked a clear turning point. It moved away from a purely utilitarian appearance and adopted a lower, wider, far more muscular stance. Its front end is simple, yet imposing. It doesn't need exaggerated details to project strength. Everything about its design feels exactly where it should be. The lines are clean, straight, and confident. The long hood, well-defined grille, and balanced proportions make the C10 feel modern even today. It's one of those pickups whose design doesn't rely on nostalgia. It simply aged well, but that presence wasn't just visual. Under the hood, the C10 could be equipped with a range of highly respectable V8 engines for the era. Versions with 307, 327, and even 350 cubic inch blocks easily produced over 250 horsepower, more than enough for a working pickup in the late 1960s. And here's an important detail many people forget. In 1967, Chevrolet introduced the rear trailing arm suspension on the C10, a much more refined system than many of its direct competitors. This made the truck not only look lower and more stable, but also drive smoother and more controlled, something uncommon for pickups of that time. Chevrolet understood something essential. A pickup could be a work tool without feeling rough or uncomfortable. The C10 delivered durability, visual balance, and a more civilized driving experience than most people expected. It's no coincidence that today it's one of the most restored and sought-after classic pickups. In today's market, a well-preserved late 1960s Chevrolet C10 typically ranges between $35,000 and $70,000, with high-end examples easily exceeding those figures. It wasn't just a beautiful pickup in its time. It became the aesthetic and functional blueprint many others would later try to follow. 1968 Dodge D-Series. Dodge pickups are among those trucks that don't need exaggeration to look good. Their design is simple, honest, and surprisingly well-balanced. They don't try to appear bigger than they are or more aggressive than necessary, and that's exactly why they look so good today. Visually, everything about this truck communicates solidity. The lines are straight, clean, almost industrial. The front end is strong without being intimidating, and the proportions are very well resolved. It's a pickup that looks like it was designed to last decades, not follow short-lived trends. During the 1960s, Dodge didn't carry the same cultural weight as Ford or Chevrolet in the pickup world, and that gave it a certain freedom. The D-Series wasn't trying to please everyone. It aimed to be functional, durable, and visually coherent. Over time, that lack of artifice became its greatest aesthetic strength. Under the hood, it could be equipped with a wide range of engines, including large V8s like the 318 and 383. In their more powerful configurations, these engines easily surpass 250 horsepower, delivering strong torques and a consistent sense of pull. Here's a particularly interesting detail. Dodge was one of the brands most committed to robust frames and heavy-duty configurations, even in versions we would today consider dual-purpose. That's why many D-Series trucks survived years of hard use, which helps explain why authentic, unrestored examples still surface today with a natural patina that only adds character. For a long time, it was an underrated pickup. It wasn't the most famous or the most photographed, but today that's exactly why its design feels fresh and distinct compared to more obvious choices. In today's market, a well-preserved late 1960s Dodge D-Series typically falls between $30,000 and $55,000, with highly original examples or carefully restored ones exceeding that range. 1966 Ford F-100. For many people, This is the exact definition of a classic American pickup. It's not extreme, not extravagant, and it doesn't try to reinvent anything. It simply does everything right. And that complete coherence is what makes it so beautiful even today. Its design communicates strength at first glance. The front end is solid, the grille is clear and well proportioned, and the body lines strike that perfect balance between toughness and functional elegance. There's no excessive chrome, no unnecessary styling lines. It's a pickup that looks strong even when it's standing still. By 1966, Ford understood its audience better than anyone. The F-100 wasn't just meant for work, but to accompany its owner every day. It was a truck that could haul, tow, and get dirty, while still looking good, parked at home. That dual purpose is embedded in its design. Under the hood, it offered everything from reliable six-cylinder engines to seriously capable V8s. Among them was the 352 V8, producing around 208 horsepower, along with even more powerful options for those seeking additional performance. It wasn't a sports truck, but it had plenty of torque and a sense of solidity that inspired confidence. An interesting detail is that this generation of the F-Series marked the moment when Ford began establishing the pickup as a vehicle of identity, not just a tool. From here on, the F-100 evolved beyond pure utility and helped pave the way for the F-Series, becoming the best-selling pickup line in history. Today, that legacy carries significant weight. In today's market, a well-preserved 1966 Ford F-100 typically ranges between $35,000 and $65,000, with highly original or carefully restored examples easily exceeding that range. It wasn't the most radical, it wasn't the flashiest, but it was very likely the most balanced of its time. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Among these three great pickups of the era, Chevrolet C10, Dodge D-Series, or Ford F-100, which one would you choose today, and why? Leave it in the comments, because this is where the discussions that really matter begin. 1960 to 1964 Studebaker Champ. This is one of those vehicles that shouldn't have worked, and that's exactly why it's so fascinating today. When Studebaker launched it in the early 1960s, the company was already struggling to survive. There wasn't enough budget to develop a completely new pickup, so they made a bold decision even by the standards of the time, combining older components with newer ideas. The result was a strange, hybrid, and absolutely unique truck. Visually, the Champ looks unlike any other American pickup of its era. Its front end came directly from a sedan, with softer lines and proportions that broke away from traditional truck aesthetics. The rear, on the other hand, was clearly utilitarian. That combination created a silhouette many people once considered awkward, and that today feels incredibly appealing because of how different it is. Under the hood, Studebaker offered several options, including six-cylinder engines and V8s capable of exceeding 220 horsepower. Its driving experience was also surprisingly comfortable, closer to a passenger car than a traditional truck. A little-known detail is that the Champ was one of the first pickups to offer daily comfort features, such as more refined interiors and a less industrial driving position. Studebaker was trying to attract buyers who wanted a pickup, but didn't want to feel like they were driving a work vehicle. Production was limited, and its commercial life was short, which explains why finding one today is difficult. That rarity, combined with its unconventional design, has made it highly valued among collectors looking for something different. In today's market, a well-preserved Studebaker Champ typically ranges between $35,000 and $70,000, depending on configuration and originality. It's not a pickup for everyone, it never was, but few represent the experimental spirit of an industry that, in the 1960s, still dared to improvise. 1967 Chevrolet El Camino. This car never tried to fit in, and that's exactly why it became unforgettable. It wasn't a traditional pickup. It wasn't exactly a car either. It was something in between, strange to some, brilliant to others. In 1967, Chevrolet gave the El Camino one of its most balanced and attractive shapes. The Chevelle-inspired front end, the low and wide proportions, and the clean side profile made it look more like a muscle car with a bed than a work vehicle. Visually, it felt much closer to a coupe than to a truck, and that was enough to divide opinions from day one. Under the hood, it could be just as serious as any muscle car of the era, from basic inline-six engines to truly respectable V8s. The most interesting versions carried the 396 big block, producing between 325 and 375 horsepower. Absolutely outrageous numbers for something that, in theory, was supposed to haul cargo in the back. That's its great narrative twist. The El Camino didn't look like a tough pickup. It looked fast, and it was. On the street, it offered a completely different experience compared to traditional trucks. A lower driving position, handling closer to a passenger car, and a sense of agility no conventional pickup could match. It wasn't meant for farms or construction sites. It was built for someone who wanted style, power, and occasional utility, in that order. An interesting detail is that, despite its sporty image, many El Caminos ended up being used as light-duty work vehicles, which makes finding a well-preserved example today increasingly difficult. Those that survived without heavy modifications or excessive wear are especially valued. In today's market, a well-maintained 1967 Chevrolet El Camino typically ranges between $35,000 and $70,000, with big block V8 versions and faithful restorations easily exceeding that figure. 1962 Ford Ranchero. If the El Camino was the provocation, the Ranchero was the direct response. Ford had already introduced the idea of blending car and pickup earlier, but by 1962, the Ranchero reached one of its most visually balanced moments. Lower, cleaner, and clearly closer to a passenger car than to a traditional truck. While the El Camino leaned into visual muscle, the Ranchero played with elegance and simplicity. Its design is more discreet, almost understated. The front end is slim, the sidelines are straight, and the silhouette feels light. It doesn't try to dominate. It tries to persuade, and for many, it does that better than its direct rival. Under the hood, the Ranchero could also surprise. While modest versions existed, Ford offered V8 engines that produced over 260 horsepower. Very respectable numbers for this type of vehicle in the early 1960s. It wasn't a power monster like some El Camino configurations, but it delivered smoother acceleration and a driving experience closer to that of a sporty sedan. That's its defining trait. The Ranchero didn't feel like a fast pickup. It felt like a car. That just happened to have a bed. An interesting fact is that many buyers chose it precisely for that reason. It was easier to live with daily, more comfortable in the city, and visually less aggressive. For some, that made it less exciting. For others, it made it perfect. Today, the early 1960s Ford Ranchero is increasingly appreciated, especially in V8 configurations and original condition. In today's market, it typically ranges between $30,000 and $65,000, depending on engine and preservation. And now comes the inevitable question. If you had to choose just one, the provocative muscle of the El Camino or the quiet elegance of the Ranchero, leave it in the comments because this rivalry has been alive for over half a century and still has no definitive answer. 1966 GMC CK series. At first glance, many people mistake it for a Chevrolet. And that's not wrong, but it's not the whole story either. Early 1960s. GMC pickups shared much of their foundation with Chevrolet trucks, but their personality was different, more serious, more restrained, more focused on buyers who valued solidity and quiet status over popularity. Visually, it's one of the most balanced pickups of the decade. Clean front end, straight proportions, and a presence that communicates order and strength without aggression. It doesn't try to impress, it tries to endure, and interestingly, that makes it very appealing today. One of the lesser-known details is that GMC often offered exclusive engines or different configurations compared to Chevrolet. Beyond the classic six-cylinder options, these pickups could be equipped with V8 engines producing over 300 horsepower, designed for heavy work, towing, and continuous use. That philosophy was felt behind the wheel. The GMC didn't chase agility or sportiness. It delivered authority. It was the kind of pickup that moved forward with powerful calm, even when loaded, even over long distances. For that reason, it became the choice of companies, fleets, and more conservative buyers. It was never the most popular, never the most visible, but it was always respected. Today, that discretion works in its favor. In today's market, a well-preserved 1966 GMC typically ranges between $30,000 and $60,000, and more collectors are seeking it precisely because it represents the other side of classic American design. 1963 to 1969, Jeep Gladiator. This vehicle never tried to be elegant in the traditional sense. It tried to be capable, and it ended up becoming beautiful because of that. When Jeep introduced the Gladiator in 1963, it followed a completely different logic than Chevrolet, Ford, or Dodge. This wasn't a pickup built for smooth highways and suburban errands. It was a rugged tool designed to survive where others simply couldn't go. Visually, the Gladiator has a strongly utilitarian presence. Straight lines, tall body, simple front end, and a stance that immediately communicates durability. There are no unnecessary decorations or attempts to soften its image. It looks ready for work even when standing still. An interesting fact is that this model was among the first to prove a pickup could truly be versatile. Heavy-duty labor, military use, industrial applications, and daily driving in rural areas. That versatility made it highly valued by public agencies and companies, but also explains why finding one today in original condition is difficult. Unlike many 1960s pickups, the Gladiator didn't age into a nostalgic object. It aged into a functional piece that still makes sense today. Its honest, almost timeless design has turned it into a highly sought-after classic. In today's market, a well-preserved 1960s Jeep Gladiator typically ranges between $40,000 and $80,000, with original 4x4 versions and faithful restorations reaching even higher figures. After looking at all these pickups, one thing becomes very clear. In the 1960s, a truck didn't have to be extreme to be beautiful. It didn't need to shout muscle or exaggerate lines. It simply needed correct proportions, clear identity, and genuine personality. Now, I want to hear your opinion. If you had to choose just one of these 1960s pickups to own today, which would it be and why? Leave it in the comments because every choice says something different about how we understand automotive beauty. And if you enjoyed this journey, I recommend watching the video appearing on your screen right now. There, we explore the rarest pickups of the 1960s, models that almost no one saw in their time and that today are true collector's pieces. Click and keep traveling with us through the golden era of the American automobile. See you in the next video.